Welcome to the Echo Rift Show. I'm Don.
And I'm Mike.
We are the creators of Echo Rift Comics.
This time on Echo Riff, the boys don't let the music do the talking, or Bono, or The Edge. It's Don's turn to talk about U2.
Yes, I have a long and storied relationship with U2. And basically what it boils down to is I hated U2 most of my life.
And I loved U2.
Whatever it was when that, very particularly, it was the Joshua Tree, Rattle and Hum era. And that was right around the time
that the whole world was falling in love.
And it was right around the time that I was discovering my own music, the way he describes in The Miracle of Joey Ramone. And it's 1987, and I'm listening to Anthrax Among the Living and the Dead Milkmen and and all these other things. And there's this band running around, and they're dominating everything. I mean, they're on MTV. They turned every video on MTV went black and white after U2 started it because everybody was following the leader. And I just didn't like them. It just bugged me. And over time, they started to bother me less. So basically, after the Octung Baby, they went sort of rock and roll. I always liked The Fly. I liked that guitar riff. But I wasn't a fan. And although my friends were all listening to Octung Baby all the time, I think it was the 2002 Super Bowl that they did that really sort of made me say, okay, I don't hate U2. They're just not for me. And I liked all their big hits like Beautiful Day and Vertigo and all those.
Slow down. So the 2002 Super Bowl is basically the 9/11 Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't say that.
It's a very powerful performance. It would have been probably no matter who performed it, but U2 did an amazing job of creating something that was a combination between a rock concert and a memorial, and just I don't know, a camaraderie, that kind of classic, 9/11 now, camaraderie between people all over the world.
Yeah, and I think that was around the moment. I think I had already sort of softened up on them because, like I said, Beautiful Day and all that stuff. They were good songs, and that really made me say, okay, there's nothing to dislike about they're not for me. It's not their thing. I'm not going to buy their albums. My wife is a huge U2 fan, by the way. So U2 albums are in my house. Of course, you're a big U2 fan. So U2's always been like all around me. And like I said, I had friends in college that just listened to Octung Baby on a loop whenever we hung out. But what's funny, and the reason I bring up what I was doing in 1987 is when this new album came out. So Apple gives away this album, and I download it because I really liked what I heard, and the song was The Miracle, the one that I opened the show with. And when I realized that what he's singing about is exactly, like, I've never related to a U2 song before, I don't think. And all of a sudden, he was singing a song I wish a million other people had written, because he was talking about the experience of discovering his music. And from what I understand, the other members in the band, it was the Ramones and New York punk in the late 70s. And I was thinking about how I think it's kind of funny the way that also ties into why I rejected them so hard in the Joshua Tree / Rattle and Hum era, which was I was listening to my own thing and they were contrary to that. They were the popular thing. And I had a real bad attitude about music until I was in my 30s. I mean, I was that your favorite band sucks guy. And I think...
Well, just explain what that means, because I don't know what that means.
It means whatever my taste is better than yours. And if you don't like what I like, you suck and your music sucks. So if you tell me you're a Def Leppard fan, I'm just going to tell you...
I am, actually.
Right, so I'm just going to tell you that you're a fool, and if you knew anything about anything, you'd know that Def Leppard sucks. So, I mean, I think that's what that means, and that's the way I was. I mean, and I've gone back and enjoyed, like, I hated Guns N' Roses, and I've gone back and ended up really enjoying Guns N' Roses later in life. So I feel like that about you too. So I guess with that intro aside, I mean, I think it's important to note, like I said, that basically the Songs of Innocence, this album, has made me a U2 fan. And I've spent the last week not just listening to that, but listening to their entire catalog. I have Google Play, and I've just been, everything's available to me. And I've really enjoyed it. Like I'm thoroughly enjoying this huge catalog of U2 music. And I think this is the point where we can both, I've done the setup because, like you said, you're a fan. You've been a fan your whole life, but I'm a true convert. And I think if we have any listeners or viewers that are the same way or don't like U2, I don't know. I found something really awesome to enjoy there that I never expected. It's been a really nice surprise.
It's funny when the don't worry, we're gonna stay on you, Don. We're gonna we're gonna get out our tools and
Big show.
yeah, don't worry. We're not gonna step too far away. Um, Back when the Joshua Tree came out, so I was in grade school, and I fell in love with the Edge's guitars. It's just that like I don't know, it's like strumming or it's
It's
like he's picking almost.
yeah,
They're not typically long sounds, although for instance on With or Without You, it's all long sounds. There's no picking. It's just these very long strums that go on for you know tens of seconds. But um, in any case, so I've loved them since I was forming my taste for music. I mean, I was in seventh grade or sixth grade, and I just found that I loved that they were melodious. I was never into really heavy stuff. I mean, I had become a fan of some heavy stuff, but by and large, I've always been into melody more than anything else. And I would say if there's one thing U2 has almost always been, it's melodious.
yeah,
But what I'm very curious about is so this album comes out of nowhere. Like I had been thinking they're due for an album, but I hadn't heard anything. A year ago, I remember hearing a little bit of chatter about it, but it was almost like, you know, complaints as to are they not doing albums anymore?
yeah.
And then you, of all people, were the person that told me that they have an album out. I mean, you know, I guess it got announced that Tuesday, right?
Yeah, I work with a bunch of nerds, so everybody was monitoring the Apple event. So I knew, you know, as soon as they had come out on stage, which isn't unheard of. U2 and Apple have had a relationship for a decade now. But
Yeah.
yeah, when they announced that it's free and it's just going to be sitting there in your iTunes library, I went and listened to it right away because I really liked what I had heard of the Miracle.
Yeah, and so it took me about a full business day before I got a hold of it. But the first thing I read was an article that said U2 releases an album for free, but we ask ourselves, this is what it said, we ask ourselves, are they still relevant? And I thought, I'm just imagining this guy with his mustache twisted up, you know, whatever
Yeah,
hipsters are doing, asking that question. I'm thinking, well, I'm not sure what that means, like what relevant means in this context, but they've partnered with the biggest company on earth. They're still relevant.
yeah.
They've found a way to be the top of what people are paying attention to. So I imagined that the album was going to be crap. I mean, I really did think like that maybe you know it's possible that they'll hit an age where they can't release something.
And that last album was a real. I was doing a little bit of research, which I usually try not to do when we do a show because I don't want to be influenced. But in this case, there was such a breadth of information that I wanted to do some reading. And apparently, critics and musical people were liked a lot of the what is it, No Line on the Horizon or No Horizon or whatever.
Yeah, no line on the horizon.
But otherwise, audiences just didn't notice. Like it's an album. It's like it didn't happen. In fact, I think it's one of their least successful albums of their 20 some year history.
It's flat. It's a strange album. It is probably their weakest album for me, and I thought maybe this is the beginning, the end, because I really hadn't had one that I had that lack of a response to.
Yeah,
So I expected this one to be a further step down the spiral, and this one is. I don't. They've made a career out of doing different things, so it's hard to say that well, this is different than what they did before. But there are elements to it that are very different than what they've done before. Like
yeah.
there's the one song that starts and it kind of sounds like the Beach Boys. The one that, I know you said you thought it was a little too cute, but I love that one that starts with them harmonizing Santa Barbara.
Exactly what they're paying tribute to. I mean, what I love about the album is the entire album is them reflecting on their lives and their influences without being kicky and trying like when they do their Ramones tribute, they don't do a song that sounds quite like a Ramones song. I mean, it does a little bit. I mean, I think that's a little bit neat. Like that guitar riff is got the effect he's using is a sort of. I mean, the Ramones never played guitar riffs that hard, really. But they I think it's cool that they went through and the second to last song is a tribute to Joe Strummer from the Clash. The one song's about his mom. Raised by Wolves is about their experience witnessing in Ireland or in the IRA stuff. So it's really like a triptych through their lives or a travel log through their lives in the form of music. And I think it's really one of the things I think is really neat, and this goes to your point of it's different, is of all the U2 albums. Again, I've only really been studying them for a week or two. It's the most it's thematic in that all the songs carry a theme. But I think it's of all the U2 albums, I think it's the one where the songs don't have a similar sound throughout the entire album. Where it seems like most of the other albums, there's a similar feeling or sound through the songs themselves. And this is almost like a collection of individual songs that are related to one another.
Yeah, I think you're right in that regard. One of the things that I thought was interesting about when I said I felt like they were doing something different, even though they've always done something different, is that they were doing. We already talked a little bit about this, but they were sort of doing other stuff, like as in other people's stuff,
Yeah.
by way of tribute. But it was interesting because they weren't doing like what I think of as traditionally U2. And and now it's funny, I didn't know any of what you just said. I mean, I knew there was something to do with the Ramones. Obviously, there was some kind of a tribute to the Ramones because Joey Ramone's name is in the title of the first song.
Right.
But I didn't know that it was about music. Like, to the extent that I've listened, I don't even know how clear the lyrics are about that.
They are. In fact,
So,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Speaking of the lyrics, the one line that I love the most is he repeats, "We were young but not dumb." And I think that that's one of those things where, like, when you're a teenager, parents or adults look at you listening to the Ramones and Blitzkrieg Bop or Among the Living or something, and
Or
they
Def Leppard.
and there's this assumption of stupidity on the youth's part, and it's not it at all. It's like something about the music, which is why I love the song so much, because he conveys that there's just something about the music that opens up your world. And I don't understand the bit about you can't he got something back that was taken away. I don't know what that means, but all the rest of the stuff really resonates with me in terms of what he means, because music was a huge part of defining me in my teens, like most kids. But I mean, but it really defined me, and that's probably why I had that bad attitude toward other bands, because I had to knock down U2 to build up, my favorite thing.
Yeah, it's interesting that that the album is also very optimistic, and it kind of ties into what you were saying about I mean, love of music. Even if it's music that you are get into because of dark thoughts, it's definitely pro you. You know what I mean? Like when people fall in love with music, even when it's like, say, Marilyn Manson or something, it the way that it makes them feel.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in this particular case, the album, for the most part, and their roots were kind of dark sided because of what they were singing about with the problems in Ireland. The Troubles, actually, the last song is called "The Troubles."
That's the only song on the album I could do without. I don't like, and in fact, looking through all their albums, I don't like any of the times they have other people singing on their songs. There's like one or two others where there's a woman singing, and then there's the Johnny Cash one on Pop, but that's like goofy. That doesn't really count because that's Johnny Cash.
Yeah, I forgot about that one until I was going back to the catalog. I'm like, oh yeah, Johnny Cash is on here.
What was
So,
exciting was, go ahead.
no, please.
What was exciting was I noticed in the Rolling Stone article, which is one of the really really positive one. A lot of the reviews I saw were people would have bad attitudes and doing that sort of, kind of like you said, the relevance. Plus, people are bent out of shape about their iTunes libraries or something, and they're taking it out on YouTube, which is sort of dumb. But the Rolling Stone person basically stated this album is another new turn for them. So this is a band that has had these sort of reinventions. So there was the Octung Baby reinvention, and then the all you can't leave behind sort of reinvention. And they're saying that is what this album is, and and it's interesting because I guess it is different than the last two albums, and so it's interesting to be a new fan and then on the ground floor of one of their changes.
Yeah, I mean, I think of them having gone through sort of the war phase, really ending and culminating with Joshua Tree, and then Rattle and Hum was this weird, self-aware. I mean, it was tied into a movie and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, the music. And I love the album, but that remains true. And then Achtung Baby like transformed music. I mean, they took such a weird. U2 was the weirdest band around, and yet everyone knew who they were. Like they were both this modern band that just came out of nowhere, and this band that everyone knew about.
Yeah, and one of the things I have to say is a shame is going back through it like I am now. The importance of Octung Baby isn't as evident when you're going back through 30. I said 20 earlier. It's like 30 some years of albums. When you've heard Beautiful Day and Vertigo, and then you go back and listen to Octung Baby. Like I remember what a big deal it is. I remember what those videos looked like and how strange it was to see them sunglassed and leather rock stars. After, I mean, one of the things I really didn't like Rattle and Hum, and I still don't like Rattle and Hum. But they changed so much. I mean, they were doing that Americana, the word I heard, Americana shtick. But they had the little hats and the ponytails and the vests and things. And then all of a sudden, they're this insane like rock star thing. And so but Octung Baby is a fantastic album. I love it, and it's just interesting to see that they did that reinvention, and that's the most dramatic. I mean, even if you look at All You Can't Ever Leave Behind, and then this album, they're still nowhere near as dramatic a difference they are as the war phase versus the Octung Baby phase.
Yeah, because I think of the Achtung Baby phase sort of running through Zooropa, which again was almost like Rattle and Hum in a sense. It was this like on the road album that they made. It came out like a year after Achtung Baby.
And it was supposed to be an EP, and they just kept recording songs.
Yeah, and they're real weird, daring. They would not have released Zooropa before Achtung Baby. I mean, the energy and crowd response wouldn't have been there. And then Pop was like sort of the final phases of that arc.
Yeah.
And I love Pop. Pop, Bono said it's a small, explosive sound, and every song is based around like a guitar riff.
Yeah.
And then after that was All That You Can't Leave Behind, and that's kind of the phase that I guess they're at the end of.
Yeah, and which was, I mean, talk about optimistic, but it was another really, I don't know how to explain it. Like it's like they evened out. They had they had that very alternative 80s post-punk sound through Joshua Tree, and then they did that Octung Baby thing where they got more electronic, and they started strutting and kind of got a little ironic, particularly on Pop. And it almost seems like All You Can't Ever Leave Behind was them sort of merging the two, and they drop the sort of irony and they keep. I don't know. There's something interesting about the sounds of those songs, but they're also very popular. And I know U2 is a very popular band, and one of the things I had read, which it doesn't surprise me looking back, but apparently it's well known in the music industry that U2 is a band who really cares what people thought of their last album, and they will absolutely change their game if people didn't like what they just did. They're like, I mean, I was thinking this earlier. Bono's like the Tom Cruise of rock and roll, and Tom Cruise isn't like, they're interested in being popular and making popular music. So the fact that they respond to Rattle and Hum with Octung Baby, or the fact that they respond to Pop, which wasn't well received and didn't sell very well, with All You Can't Ever Leave Behind, or like, and their last album, the fact that they respond to that with Songs of Innocence, it's very interesting that they react that way, and I think it's cool. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, they have an amazing work ethic. It's one of the things that I love about them is that in the end of the day, they feel that they have a job on the earth. I mean, they've stayed together as a band. There's never been any real weird solo departures. I mean, I know there's been little tiny side projects and things, and Bono made a movie at one point.
Yeah.
But by and large, they have been dedicated to keeping that band together and producing music on a regular basis, even if it's in the form of the best of albums that they would release. So
Yeah.
they have this fantastic work ethic if you're a fan of theirs. And even if you're not, I mean, they're making popular music that's going to end up on your radio, and you're probably going to end up tapping your toe to.
Well, I was thinking that earlier, and I think I had said this to you as we were preparing for the show. I had trouble even evaluating the Joshua Tree because it's an album. You don't even have to be a U2 fan, and you know all the words to the major songs. I mean, and the major songs, I think, 6 of the 12 songs were singles or something, maybe 8. I mean, it seems like they were just single after single. And I know some of them probably were, I think Desire was Rattle and Hum, but I know the words to those songs, and I never listened to the Joshua Tree deliberately once in my life. I mean, particularly that. Now I looked, and that album is one of the best-selling albums of all time. I mean, it's in the top like 30. But that was such a powerhouse in the 80s, and that's what they're all about.
So when you say that so this album came out a little over a week ago, right? Or no, was it this Tuesday?
It was well, no, it was a week ago.
Okay.
Might have been last Tuesday.
So what now? Obviously you heard the first song, but so what was this falling in love phase? I mean,
Well, I
because it's one thing to like a song, but it's another thing to like an album, and then it's yet another thing to desire to go back and revisit and then actually enjoy. So I'm just curious how
well,
your brain works.
some of it's probably just caving to the fact that maybe I never disliked U2 as much as I thought I did in the first place. So that's probably a little bit of it. But I think as I went through the album, it's one of those rare albums that I liked it the first time, and there aren't too many albums like that, and the ones that I do have are special.
Yeah.
It was the songs. It's really the songs in the last half of the album, I'd have to say, because the three songs that follow the Miracle are what I would say are more of the typical U2 mellower songs, and they're really nice songs. But then I think Volcano comes in, and that's just this big rock song. And there's the three songs in a row. There's the it's Raised by Wolves, which I love because that's an interesting one because they're incorporating their own sound. I mean, I called it a Duran Duran. Like I made a comment that it was the best Duran Duran song in 20 years. But really, if you go back and listen, they did those same kind of jigga jigga jing, like that same kind of effect it appears all over their early albums.
Right.
And I love that song, and it's so haunting and big. And then the Cedarwood Lane it's almost like a Black Keys / Monster Magnet song. I mean, that guitar riff, I've never heard it. I don't think there's another U2 song with a guitar riff like that. It's not the kind of sound they typically do. So anyway, it's really the last half of the album that really grabs me. I'm always going to be more drawn to the rock and roll songs and the hard thumping songs.
Right.
All those songs do qualify, and it's not to say I don't like the softer ones, but it's just the kind of music fan I am. I don't tend to like the love songs or the melancholy songs. And like you said, there aren't really melancholy songs. Like even the one about his mom um, is really sweet, but it's not sad. It's somehow like
Do you know which one that is?
Iris.
Oh yeah, Iris. I know that. Yeah.
And it's really sweet. It's definitely got. If you listen to the lyrics are very sad. Particularly, I didn't know this, but his mom died when he was 14, and he's talking about holding her hand, and he thought he was leading her, and all these other really like sort of sweet things. But it's still not a sad song. It's still an optimistic song.
There's one on there called "Song for Someone,"
Yeah.
and it's probably the mellowest song on the album, but it's very beautiful. I don't even know what it's about. It's just every time I listen to it.
That's the Joe Strummer's tribute song. It's the second to last song. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I really like that, and that's my favorite of the mellow songs. Because when I go through the history of U2, it's interesting that they did go through all these phases. Like their first album, their first and second album are they're definitely a rock band, but they're a rock band in that way that the Cure and the Smiths and some of those it's that post-punk rock. Like it's good musicians, but it's not driving. It isn't super high tempo. And then you hit War, and War is this just assault, like from beginning to end. I don't think there's a single mellow song on it. And it's angry and it's hard driving from beginning to end. Where even Octung Baby has one and a couple other like slow tempo songs. And I think that it's just interesting to see them go through these phases. And then, of course, songs like Vertigo and I keep referring to the same two songs, but there's more than that of the later era, the 2000s era, where they have these sort of big pop rock songs. And they're all really great. And it's just, but that's definitely the stuff I gravitate towards.
Yeah, they're a great band. I love I love Bono's lyrics, even though they tend to
On the news.
yeah, they're not terribly deep, but I just like them, and they're almost redundant in some instances.
Yeah.
But they just I don't know, they're good, beautiful pop music, and the Edge, I I mean, when I listen to U2, I'd say half the time I'm just listening to what's going on with the guitar.
Yeah.
Just studying it, like, and I don't know how to play an instrument or anything. I just love hearing the sounds that he creates.
That's one of the things I really love about those. There is that huge, I don't know how to explain it. There's just that huge uh, sonic sounds. Like there's just this bed of sounds that are just all on. Because I have to say, my favorite album is War, and I figured out today why. And it's because I find that percussion is really, really important in rock and roll. And War has percussion like none of the other U2 albums. I mean,
Huh.
like a freight train. Like you have to put it in, and if you think about it, like even if you just think about it, it's not humming "Sunday Bloody Sunday" to your in your head. It's the drums, like it's the there's that sort of military thing going on with that song, but those songs are so hard driving, and even though they're not super fast tempo all the time, but I just that album from beginning to end, like there is just driving, like the drums are just bang bang bang, and it's like a freight train the whole time. And I think that's right now, and favorite albums change, so that's why, like right now I would say my two favorite are Songs of Innocence and War. And it's funny that I would pick War because that's like 1984, and there's a little bit of nostalgia there. I mean, that sound, that sort of sound of the 80s, alternative music is very pleasing to like sort of hear and revisit. There's some nostalgia there because particularly on Boy and October, the first two albums, they really sound like The Cure and bands like that. Like they don't, they're not, aside from the Edge, they don't sound that distinguished. And Bono's didn't really, in my opinion, Bono didn't really become a vocal talent until later, until like Joshua Tree, when you really start to hear him do those high pitched singing and the really varied singing that he does now and is capable of. He's just sort of yelling, like in particularly on War. He's like, it's almost like a heavy metal band. They're just not playing music that loud and fast, but he's just sort of yelling the lyrics.
I'll have to listen to that. I'm not. It's funny. I mean, where I became a fan was what's the album before Joshua Tree?
Uh,
Unforgettable Fire.
Double Fire, which is one of their mellowest albums.
Yeah. So my familiarity with them is whatever's on the best of albums, and I don't even know if I own the three albums before the Unforgettable Fire.
And I would have
Go
to say,
back and listen to them to make sure.
yeah, and October isn't the song Gloria is on October, but October really doesn't stand out. And I don't think it was everybody sort of felt that way at the time. Like it was exciting that they had their second album. Boy's pretty good. I mean, even more than just a curiosity. Boy's a pretty good album. But October's really they're still finding their way. And then they come back with War. And from what I understand, War is when they sort of took the world by storm and became a huge sort of college radio force in the alternative rock and roll and bleeding into the mainstream with Sunday Bloody Sunday. And there's other songs on there. What's the name of the
New
song?
Year's Day.
New Year's Day, and there's a third one, the one about the you and I, and I can't think of the name. I'm not going to try to pull it up, but it's another one of their famous songs. I mean, so there's at least three of their biggest hits, the ones you always hear on the classic rock stations, come off of that, as well as Gloria and I forget what the song is on Boy. That's their big hit. But anyway, so that's my experience. I'm really just loving listening to I'm just loving listening to U2 right now, and I'm gonna keep doing it. And who knows, maybe my taste will change, and I'll start to like some of the other albums more. Like I can't get into Rattle and Hum. I can't get into pop. I can't get into the last album. I'll have to say though, as whole albums, the most recent ones, like Slim from Paper Keg is a huge U2 fan, and he was talking about how he and then a few other people on Twitter chimed in are huge fans of the All You Can't Leave Behind era. And I find those albums are good, but they don't speak to me like the older and the middle ones do.
I think it's because they're probably just sufficiently younger.
Yeah, that's their
I
age.
mean, they're like what, 10 years younger than us?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, so there'd be that I can imagine them that being when they would come on board because that was a huge album and it has a lot of hits on it and it's very I don't know, palatable
Yeah,
for lack of anything else. Whereas pop was a little abrasive. I love it, but an acquired taste, and so is Zooropa. And then Achtung Baby would have been sufficiently before their time that it may simply sound like someone else's music.
One of the neat things while we were talking about Slim, he had already sent me a track, and I read about this. I didn't know this, but U2's famous for all these songs that are just out there, and they might not even be on albums. That they're all, and then there's a lot of B-sides that haven't been collected. Like you have to go get the B-side, and there's this song "Electrical Storm" that I guess they did several versions of it. I don't know if it appears on any proper album, but he had some cut that was real raw and hadn't been very overly produced, and it was really cool. But he had sent me like 3 versions of it, and one of them was the uncut version. But I found there was one of those like blog, like turns out, but there was like the top 10 best U2 songs you never heard of. And they apparently they have a whole history of these songs that just litter, like you have to go hunt for them, but they have all these songs over the last 35 years that you can get a hold of that never made it to an album.
Electrical Storm, that was released with something because that was a big hit. Like I don't even know if I want to say big hit. That got a lot of airplay.
No,
And it's not.
Yeah.
As their songs go, it's not one of, like, as popular songs of theirs go, it's not one of my favorites. But I don't know what it was. Was it from a soundtrack?
It might have been. And you know what? I forgot what he told me about it. What he told me was when they finally released it, it was this heavily produced. I think some guest producer had taken and done a mix.
Probably Orbit mixes.
Yeah, and he was and Slim Matt impressed with it as the original one, which I listened to. He sent me a copy of it or a link to it, and it wasn't as produced. It was more like 4 guys playing instruments as opposed to this other stuff going on.
Yeah. I'll have to check that out. That's interesting.
Yeah. So anything else on YouTube? Is there any other YouTube piece of information that we have? I had so many thoughts in the past week that I never could have communicated them all.
Well, one song, Ultraviolet's been in my head for 22 years.
Don't I know?
There's a part at the end of the song, it's like the last probably minute of the song where he just keeps repeating the word baby.
Yeah.
It's baby, 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 light my way. But he says it like 1,000 times, and it's got this awesome melody, and I have never, ever been able to get it out of my head. If you know me, you've heard me singing it.
I have, because I think I didn't even know the song, and I knew it from you. And then I finally heard the song. Not recently, I'd heard it years ago, but I was like, oh, that's the song he's always singing.
And about a year ago, a bunch of bands put out an album. They put out Achtung Baby. Each band covered a different song.
I remember you telling me about that.
It's pretty cool. I mean, if you're an Achtung Baby, it's pretty cool. They're all good songs, and they're all pretty good covers. Some of them are worthwhile competitors for the real ones, and some of them are not so great, but it's worth checking out.
You remember one final YouTube memory. Do you remember when, I remember this so vividly, and so does my wife. My oldest son, I think, was 3 years old, 2 or 3 years old. We had gone out, his birthday's around Thanksgiving, and we had gone to the King of Prussia Mall, which is a big mall around here. And you picked up How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. I think it had just come out, and it was back when you still bought CDs, and when one still bought CDs. And we were listening to it, I guess, on the ride, because the single Vertigo was already on the radio and being played everywhere. And his little voice, maybe he was 2, but I remember him singing, hello, hello.
That's funny.
It's so funny, and I have such a vivid memory of like sitting in our car on the ride home and him singing along from his car seat in the back, and you and my wife and him being in the car. So that's another reason. How do you hate U2 when you have a cute memory like that?
Yeah, that was cool. I definitely remember that.
So last week, episode 244, we did an episode where we reflected on 9/11, and we sort of wanted to do our own kind of a time capsule of our memories of that day. And we had a really cool response. And one of the things, like a lot of people, I think that it was nice to hear how many people liked the episode. And you go into pretty much everything we do with confidence because we kind of do it for ourselves. But it was really nice to hear all the reaction. And one of the things we had done is we sort of sent out a call and said, hey, share with us your memories. And one of our listeners did call in with a message. And we love voicemails, because if you voicemail us, you will get played on our show. So let me play his voicemail.
Hi, this is Brian Weiss again, retrying the 9/11 remembrance.
You screwed up the first time.
When 9/11 happened, I was a senior in college. I was just about to graduate, and I had taken a summer Greek class, but then transitioned to an every morning Greek class during college. So every morning I got up and from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock I was learning how to read biblical Greek. I just remember getting back from one of those sessions. And again, everybody talks about the beautiful weather. I went to a small liberal arts college in eastern Pennsylvania called Susquehanna University, and the weather was beautiful. The campus was beautiful. The fall leaves were just starting to turn a little bit. I remember that they weren't all the way yellow and brown and orange and what have you. But they were just a little bit starting to turn. And I just remember that cool chill in the air, and it was just a beautiful day. And I got up, had no idea what had happened. As was normal for that time, I got up and just went right to class. Literally rolled out of bed, threw clothes on, and went to class. And when I had got back to my room, when I had returned to my room, it was like the entire world suddenly changed. At first, I didn't know about it. But then I was on AOL Instant Messenger, which I don't know that anybody uses anymore. But a very close friend of mine from high school sent me a message, and she said, "Brian, did you know what's going on?" And I said, No, how are you doing? I'm trying to catch up with her. And we had dated a little bit in high school, but we were mostly friends. And she was trying to talk to me about what was on TV, which was bizarre to me. And finally she said, "Brian, just turn on television." I said, what channel? She goes, "It's any channel. It'll be on any channel." So I just remember turning the TV on. Both towers were on fire but hadn't fallen yet. And we had news of the Pentagon, but we didn't know about the plane in Pennsylvania. At least I hadn't known about them at that point. And then I just remember her saying, "I can't believe this is happening." And just that moment there, she lives far, far away. She's married now, has 2 kids. That bonded me to her in a weird way. And not in a weird way, but just, she was the one who told me about this. She was the one to explain this to me, to introduce me to the new world, as it would be. And to be honest with you, I remember, maybe this is just rose-colored glasses, but I remember the world being so simple before 9/11. So simple. I just remember life being relatively argument-free. After 9/11,
And that's where his got cut off. But I think that it's interesting that he says a lot of the things we say about it. He said, and I've said in the past about being connected to the people you were with when you found out.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like he was saying that she was there with him when the world changed, and it's for people that don't remember it very well, or that might have been too young to fully appreciate it. And I don't know what age that is. I mean, I really don't know how old or young you have to be to recognize the gravity of what happened then, and the impossibility of it all, and the new. I mean, talk about resets. I mean, just complete resets, and what I consider possible, and I think I speak for everybody that knew what came before, that was beyond all comprehension.
Yeah.
That was beyond, like, you and I would write stories and try and think of disaster situations, and that is beyond anything I ever would have thought was acceptable in fiction.
Yeah.
Like, so for him to say that, I totally get it. I mean, it was like passing through a gate. And the thing that I guess upsets me, I mean, it upsets me. What else am I going to say is that if that's possible, use your imagination and don't bar any holds, because there's evil out there.
Yeah, and it was, I don't know, and the world has continued to be a turbulent place. I mean, it never ever calmed down, and maybe it never will. And it's, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But thanks a lot, Brian, for tapping in and giving us your story. I will we'll be glad to have anyone else. Again, you can still send us letters, letterrecord.com.
Let me say one thing. It goes back to the beginning of this conversation and ties into 9/11. Go out on YouTube and check out that Super Bowl performance by U2.
Yeah, and I'll do it in our show notes as well.
Joshua Tree starts with a song called Where the Streets Have No Name. And the very first lyrics of the song are, I want to run. And there's probably never been a better way to start an album than those lyrics. Even if you're not a fan of the music, I think you'll appreciate the momentum that it has when it kicks off. And part of their tribute is to include that song. And part of the way he ends that song is by changing the lyrics in a beautiful way. So if you don't know the song, you're not going to recognize that, but it won't matter. I'll say this: he includes the word love in places that he didn't before, and he includes the word we where he originally had the word I. So it's just a really, really beautiful performance.
Yeah, and unfortunately, so many of those high-profile things get robbed from YouTube, and apparently no one has ever gone in and taken that away. So you can go see it, and you can see it in high definition. It's really well done. I guess there is one final note. You brought up something I actually have a card on, and that's that U2 really knows how to start an album. And you talk about it in the case of Where the Streets Have No Name. But there's, between Sunday, Bloody Sunday on War, Zooropa on Octung Baby, Vertigo on How to Build an Atomic Bomb, or How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb, and The Miracle, and then of course Beautiful Day on the other one. It's one of the things I think is a really impressive art that they have down, and that is that Gloria, I think, is the first song on October.
Discotheque.
Yeah, and it's just cool that they have that sense to really know how to open an album. So, all right, well, that is our show. My name is Don. You can find me on Twitter. I am at Don_Garvey. And you can also check out, we're going to start doing Doctor Who episode reviews straight to YouTube. So we're not going to release them as podcasts. You can go to youtube.com/EchoRiftVideo to check those out. So go over there and subscribe to the